Hey everyone, this is Lauren Spagnuolo with Tea and Chocolate, and welcome to today's segment. I am really honored and excited to have my guest today, Mr. Tony Chapman. We are both in Canada. I'm in Vancouver, and he's on the East Coast in Toronto. And Tony is a marketing strategist, and he's also the host of a very interesting podcast that you should check out called Chatter That Matters. And it is sponsored by RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, correct?
That's correct. And if anybody needs tea and chocolate this morning, it's you. I got you up at 7 in the morning to do this interview. So
You're so sweet. Thank you. Tony gave me an idea this morning about what we should call this conversation because Tony and I have never met. We are colleagues on LinkedIn, and I'm always following all these wise words that he's sharing. And this segment is going to be called Impossibility to Possibility. And Tony, I have to say that when you're expressing your views on a variety of topics, that's the intention that you're always putting out there. You're claiming what's going on, but you're always saying, but wait, there's this sense of faith and hope and all that. So I really appreciate your posts. I think they're wonderful, and you have a wonderful audience as well. I love their responses and how they contribute to the conversation. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the teachings. It's wonderful. Thank you.
well, thank you for saying so. I mean, I do believe that we are drowning in a storm of negativity out there, and the more you feel the sky's falling, the more it falls. And I think that if we just stop for a minute and realize what we have as a country, what we have as a human race, what we have in front of us, there's so many opportunities. And if we just focus a little bit more on putting a positive step forward versus always feeling like we're on our back heels, I do think almost anything's possible.
Yeah, that's great. So with this particular ideology, did that sort of perpetuate in the very early beginnings in your childhood? Like, how did that sense of wonder and positivity start for you?
That's a great question. I mean, my childhood up until about age 8 was fantastic. I had great parents, wonderful, supportive. But then my dad got mental health issues. He became bipolar, which they call manic depressive. And that created absolute chaos and carnage in our house. I mean, we were always moments away from losing everything, and we didn't have a lot. So it propelled me in those days, I think, just to not ever be in that situation again where I felt a complete loss of control. And so that's what drove my entrepreneurial spirit. And my dad, when he was sober, and that's how he kind of self-medicated, was through alcohol. Wonderful person, charismatic, human being, would think, I mean, there was a kid down the street, Charlie, in those days that people would have, claimed to be slow. My dad would knock on the door and take Charlie for a walk. He's just he was a great person, but he had these mental health issues. My mom, no idea how she kept a roof over her head. She was tireless, creative. Age 5, I wanted to shake my neighbors down with a lemonade stand, and my mom turned that into a business project where I had to buy her lemons, rent her pitcher, figure out profit margin.
Oh my gosh.
And those lessons in life you get as a child. In my podcast, I talk to a lot of ordinary people who do extraordinary things, and time again, it comes back to, what did you take out of your childhood? And sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's frustrations, other times it's accomplishments. But when you can draw upon those the rest of your life, that's a childhood well spent. So that's where I think I got my start. And then coming up to Toronto from Montreal, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I didn't have a network. I didn't go to the Upper Canada, the old boys school. And I kind of had to find my way into the Toronto world. And I think what really differentiated was I wasn't afraid to bring ideas out. Sometimes they were the craziest ideas, sometimes they were laughed at, but I never lost my appetite for telling people, what if we did it this way? I know you always do it that way, but what about this? And when you do that enough, you get people on the other side. You find these amazing clients that go, yeah, let's try it. Let's experiment. Let's do something different. And that's where I really gained the confidence to realize that ideas matter, insights matter, energy matters, and all of that can combine to even counter what might have been a relationship that was formed between my competitor and that client, even in school, because you just gave them enough compelling reasons to want to do business with you. So that's kind of where I really got the energy of doing it. And I've never stopped having that sense of wonder of what is possible. And listen, again, I would say 95% of my ideas are not great. They're not, they might be desirable and not feasible, but every once in a while they click and you create something that you go, that was a game changer. And that's the kind of the adrenaline that I think people in the creative industry live for.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think though that's, I don't know, is it the point that we're always trying to get it right? At the end of the day, I mean, you're just still, you know, finding your way, through life as well, through your creativity and insight.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that, we tend to want to, in this era, pigeon people into, you're a scientist, a mathematician,
Yes.
you're a tradesman, you're this, you're that. And you can't start putting somebody in that box and they start finding their way in that box and they can't escape it. And I think that again, when I talk to these people in my podcast, more often than not, they're more Renaissance driven. They're involved in all sorts of different things. They're interested in humanity. That's
Yes.
why I'm going off topic, but I think
No.
liberal arts should be a must topic taught in schools, because
Yes.
philosophy and psychology and critical thinking, to me, is as important as memorizing any date in history, if not more.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think it would be wonderful to see more children on the streets offering lemonade stands. Don't you think?
I think entrepreneurship and really getting kids to earn their way forward, even allowances that were based on chores and,
Yes.
duties around the house.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that is, not gone by the wayside, but the sense of, parents and kids being best friends, as opposed to being some of the great lessons in life is when you have to do something, whether you like it or not, but feeling that sense of accomplishment and realizing that, there's a purpose to things and there's a
Mm-hmm.
purpose to action and there's a purpose to work. And if you can find that purpose, I mean, I think you get a lot of reward from it. It doesn't have to be monetary. So kids doing a lemonade stand, absolutely. My down the street, I remarried about 8 years ago, and her sister from South Africa moved. And they have 3 young kids, and how they parent, I think, I would love to bottle to everybody, because these kids are accountable for their actions, and they believe in risk and reward as opposed to just granting gifts.
Excellent. So let's segue into, for the audience that doesn't know, that Tony started 2 advertising agencies in Toronto, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did those opportunities feed you? What were you, how were you wanting to contribute in the world through those organizations you created?
First of all, I got fired a lot as a kid because when you're bringing a lot of ideas all the time, there's not your next above you, supervisors, managers. These are just part-time retail jobs, stocking shelves and stuff.
Right.
They're not always appreciative of it. They just want you to come in and do your job. So I decided an entrepreneurship was probably my best path. So when I started my, agencies, I mean, I go back then, it was just being completely naive. I had no idea how to run a business. I wanted to surround myself with like-minded people, positive, happy, energetic. We came up with, a couple of hooks, things that clients could buy into. And we just learned as we went. And I laugh sometimes thinking about my early days. I had 110 employees in my first agency. And if I knew then what I know now, I probably could have done it with half the people or being twice as big. But we were just learning and having fun and filling our knapsack with adventure. So, that's what at the beginning, I just wanted to prove I could do it. And then over time, I really started to value and understand what it means to have a great culture, what it means to have people that, and they use the word empowered, but people that feel they had skin in the game. People that understood that why we mattered wasn't so much what we did, but the impact it had. Our first agency was really focused internal communications. We did a lot of sales conferences in those days, the big screens, bring people together. And it wasn't so much that we could produce slides or these big slide shows or the energy of a conference. It was afterwards, how did people feel? Were they more motivated, inspired? Did they feel recognized? Were they more prepared to go back to the marketplace and do business? And once we understood that was our role, and the, the why we mattered versus what we did. That's something I've carried with me since then, and it's really been my permission to knock on clients' doors, because it's not what I'm trying to sell you. It's more about where your journey is in life, where you're heading, and how can I help you get to where you want to go. And then when you play that role, I call it the Yoda role in a story. You're not there to defeat the evil empire. You're there to help Luke Skywalker accomplish their goals. I think when you apply that approach to both the clients you serve, the suppliers that you're honored that they do business with, and your employees, I think, you talk about this, the theme of the show, impossible becomes very possible, because people are in it together, because there's something greater than just getting a job done.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of which, I wondered about this, in terms of, how we can have positivity and hope, for current businesses, for the present and the future. And what's your advice or your perspective on how businesses, since small businesses have absolutely drowned because of COVID, and I don't know if that's also because of the way the government administration has handled this particular situation. What's our hope like for Canada when it comes to dreaming, dreaming about starting these businesses in this
Fantastic
climate?
question. So, nobody asked for COVID or wanted it.
Sure.
And to be fair to our leaders, they weren't prepared. We didn't have any provisions for it. They were just dealing with trying to get through the day.
Fair.
And a lot of bureaucracy. I mean, we are so overgoverned as a country that it's for 38 million people, and we just keep swelling the size of our government. And the people in the government don't have a sense of skin in the game, because they're fully indexed pensions and they're guaranteed jobs. So there's a lot of problems just with that. But when you come to small business, which is something I'm very passionate about, they're the heart of the Canadian economy. And that's not just a nice thing to say. They are the heart. They are the vast majority of our economy is driven by small business. And most of the small business owners have everything connected. Their life, their livelihood, their assets are all one thing. So the way we've shut them down, especially in, like, Ontario is now heading into the worst market in the world in terms of the length of our lockdown. It's been brutal. I mean, you can't even use the words fair. It's complete incompetence on behalf of our government that we can kick these small businesses curbside. We can shut down restaurants for over a year, but we still allow people to cram into a big box store. We still allow them to shop at our Ontario government-owned liquor stores and our Ontario government-owned pot stores and buy lottery tickets. And we still allow Amazon trucks to crowd our streets and dump off all this excessive packaging. We allow all of this, and yet we penalize the people that have got heart, that know the people in our local neighborhoods, that live on our main streets, who sponsor our kids' soccer teams. And it's just, I keep going, there must be a hidden agenda why we are putting handcuffs behind their back, handing out Band-Aids, which is more and more debt they're taking on, is subsidies from the government that they have to pay back, with no science, no merit, no thinking through it, just sheer panic. And because they don't have the lobbying power that the people whose lobbies are open have. So it's terrible. So what's going to come on the other side of it? We'll have entrepreneurs in tech. We'll have entrepreneurs that play in the clouds. We'll have entrepreneurs that are trying to create technology. But the physicality, the energy, our main streets are going to be absolutely decimated. Well, having restaurants say they're going to open up and then close them right before a big weekend with all that food inventory. We're just making horrible decisions. And I think the price that will be paid is a price that we'll feel for generations to come. And the last thing I'll say on this is, and the amount of debt we're taking on and not seeing really anything for it, other than our children are going to be put in servitude for the rest of their life servicing this debt. So all of this is happening at a time that is, we will study for years to come. I can only hope that the will and the resilience and the fortitude of small businesses, that out of these ashes, there will be some growth, and maybe over the next 10 to 15 years, we will start bringing back what we covet as human beings, is those physical locations where we can socialize and all senses are firing on all cylinders, versus treating our phone like a vending machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really makes me, question as citizens of Canada, if we see ourselves as citizens, rather than, this media constantly kind of telling us that we're consumers, and these are very two different ways of consciousness as we move into the world. And it certainly does make one think about, okay, what's the big picture? What's really going on based on their decisions? And we have very little control, or do we? Do we have a lot of control or not? What do you think?
I don't think we do, because social media has splintered us to the point where we're living in these little tribes of like-minded people. So I hate the conservatives, I hate the liberals.
Yes.
I'm for and I'm against, and we get validated for our opinions, and they become more ferocious and nasty and angrier as we're surrounded by people. So we go, well, everybody thinks that way. So the ability to mobilize the mass class, to start marching, to demanding change. There's not, and listen, I voted liberal in my past. So I'm not some diehard conservative. And frankly, Aaron O'Toole, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. So this isn't, but I would have to say that what we've seen in Ottawa for the last 6 years, very few governments in the past would have survived. I mean, the conflicts of interest, billions of dollars, partisan nets being feathered, it just wouldn't happen. But today you can survive because we're not dealing with democracy and a middle ground where everybody's congregating. And that's a dangerous place for democracy. And that's why I think democracy is endangered in so many countries around the world, going extinct in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan's an issue. India could be an issue because social media no longer is about for the people, by the people. It really is this very splintered, angry, defensive principles versus me taking the time to actually, whether I agree with you or not, at least listen to what you have to say.
So here's maybe a fired up question for you with regards to social media. What was your response when, is it Jack Dorsey of Twitter or Facebook and all the rest of them, when they shut down Mr. Trump's social media account? What was your response to that?
Well, it's another great question. So social media is private held enterprise. So in fact, those owners can do whatever they want because they're not public broadcasters.
Right.
I think if a public broadcaster, if a mainstream news organization decided I'm no longer going to air anything of Donald Trump, that's a real freedom of speech issue.
Right.
My problem with social media in general is they are the most faux news organizations in the world. They will take, all they're looking for is eyeballs and data to monetize. Their whole mission is, geez, if I see you're downloading, you spend a lot of time looking at flowers because you love to grow and garden. You're looking at schools for somebody. I could take all of this stuff and I shuffle together and I fly fish in more content that you bring on, so you become more addicted to my site. And the more I learn about you, the more I can be very precise in how I seduce the way you think, feel, and behave. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would personally like to see social media be banned from covering news in general. It won't happen, but because I think it's very biased and it's very much used to put kerosene on these fires. But that probably was a Tony Chapman years ago that said we should shut down newspapers because the editorials are shaping how we think, and shut down newsreels because they're propaganda. I mean, propaganda has been around since the beginning of time.
Right.
People exaggerated. People would come back from a war and talk about their conquest because you didn't know any different because you weren't there. So I guess it's existed from the beginning of time. So long answer to my question is, I'm glad in many ways that when the President Trump was encouraging what was happening in Washington, getting 51% of the Republicans to believe that the election was fixed. I think it was time to neuter what he had to say, because a position of that power, especially the President of the United States, I think you're obligated to tell the truth and not use social media to fuel lies. So in that case, it's probably the right decision, but it's a dangerous slope when you can decide thumbs up or thumbs down, and you have the scale and size of these social media platforms. I mean, all the networks combined have not produced, in their entire history, have not produced the content that gets put up on YouTube every 30 days. So it's a changing of the guard. So
yeah. When I actually, if you don't mind my saying so, when I heard that happened, it wasn't so much about him being, canceled. It's more about, okay, what does that really actually mean for everyone, as you mentioned about freedom of speech? And that's the concern of mine, and that I'm consistently seeing as we are, we hear so and so's canceled and so and so's. It's the most childish game that we're playing currently.
And we're also, the government in Canada is trying to
Yes.
censor what's in the social media and subsidize the existing media. So the conflicts of interest, we saw it last week with Pfizer, that, these influencers in France were going to be paid to discredit Pfizer. Social media is a weapon of mass destruction. It's offered a lot of advantages to people. I mean, Facebook and connectivity and chatting, and it's if we didn't have Zoom and we didn't have this technology during the whole COVID crisis, the whole world could have collapsed. And I think this had happened 15 years ago. What would we have done? We couldn't have worked remote. We would have, it would have. Yeah. So there's a lot of advantages, but the disadvantage of it is it can be used to wage wars. It can be used for cybercrime. It can be used for undermining democracy. It can be used to feed people's already nasty biases. And that's the danger that we got to deal with as a society. And I don't sure there's a way to check it. I don't mean, whether you silence a Donald Trump or not, there's thousands of other people in the wing that want to just continue to throw kerosene on those fires. Well,
there are, but the hypocrisy is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's getting more and more, anyway, obvious to me. But okay. So let's talk about values for a moment. Tell me what are the things that you value in your life?
Another great question. So I believe there's values and value. And value is when you put a price on something. Do I value it?
Yes.
What am I willing to pay for it? Mm-hmm. Values are very different. Values is really about transformation. Values is about becoming a better person, helping someone get to where they want to go. Yeah. This whole world of moving from transactions to transformation, to being part of a greater thing. That's what I value. I value brands that are doing it. I value individuals. Again, that's why I do Chatter That Matters. I mean, the people that are putting a dent in the universe, they don't have to be giants. I mean, they're not all Chris Hadfields of the world or Harry Connick Jr. Some of just do a little thing every day that you go, wow, if we could learn from that and all do that little thing every day, how much better the world would be. Mm-hmm. So that's what I truly believe in the sense of values. Mm-hmm. In doing that, I value them in the sense that I'll invest my time to learn more about them. I'll invest my time to do stories about them. But I think a lot of people confuse it with what is the value of something in terms of price, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, because I'm getting confused myself, but
that's anyways. Okay. No, I hear what you're saying, and it's good that you articulate it, because whoever's listening is going to gain from that perspective.
I think when you start looking at the world right now, so many people attention's the oxygen in human endeavor. The only way we ever persuade anybody to do anything is if we get their attention. And we're living in a very noisy world, harder and harder to get attention.
Yeah.
More often than not, I'm seeing a lot of tensions is about offers, price. That's the tiebreaker. If I put something out that's shiny and you go, wow, I'm gonna pay attention to it. Then it's next thing it sort of is that user experience. I pay attention to things that work really well, aesthetically pleasing. I tap my card and I can pay. I pay attention to that. I'm gonna adopt that in my life. Then you get into things that have heart, and I really am enjoying organizations that are they're more heartfelt. They're believing in, Unilever says we can help be part of reducing food waste. But it's the ones that are really playing in the transformative area that are really doing, how Dove did years ago to help women come to terms with their feeling they were beautiful because they were chasing all these false beauty stereotypes put out by magazines, or RBC, when Future launched a $500 million program over 10 years to help Canadian kids find and pursue their path in life. Well, $50 million a year can go a long way to what's going to be one of the biggest problems, because I might be taking an education today for a job that won't exist by the time I graduate. That's how fast. So think people that are working on that transformative scale, I have a lot of heart for. And that's why those are the stories about impossibilities becoming possible, because they're going beyond purpose. Michael McCain, I did a show with, talking about moving his attention away from shareholder value, which is just return on investment and capital deploy, to shared values, and saying we have to be measured also based on how we treat our planet, our resources, the communities we live in. And it's not just rhetoric and a plaque. I mean, they're the first carbon neutral food company in the world. They plan to be have the best or smallest energy footprint of any major food company. They're on a path to go. And when you're recruiting someone, I go, hey, come and join Maple Leaf Foods, and here's your salary and your bonus. And you might be interested, but if you really say, but before you do it, understand that this is what we stand for, and this is what you're signing up for.
Right.
I think you're going to attract a very different person, because they're going to go, my heart's in this. You are doing your part to help transform the planet.
Yes. You make an interesting point about, Mr. McCain and other entrepreneurs out there about how they make changes, make for the positive and for the betterment of this country. And I think at most often we are misinformed. We have no understanding of what might go on in corporations. Like, we might have this idea, and I find that the media, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I find that the media, or just these false ways of thinking, doesn't really get us to the truth of what's actually going on. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely. I mean, these social media slingshots can rain down on a brand and a heart. That's an easy target to take down. If somebody's made a mistake, a person on Air Canada didn't serve somebody well, next thing you know, everybody's attacking Air Canada. And that's just how we're voyeurs looking in for a second and then moving on. I mean, it's on the surface now. And I think to drill into an organization, good or bad, if you discover something within the supply chain that doesn't sit right, that should be exposed, and that should be transparent. But on the other side, if you also find on that quest for transparency, wonderful things that companies doing or different companies doing, that should be celebrated. And I think when we renew our faith in capitalism having a higher purpose than just profit, and we realize that it's not the enemy, but it's our way to earn our way forward. It's our way to create the wealth that allows us to have the social programs. Because right now, this whole facade of Canada is being paid for by a lot of borrowed dollars. This was even before COVID. It wasn't, we weren't earning our way forward. We were just every election year filling off troughs of entitlement that people would stick their head in and forget everything that happened in the past and stick up their ballot because they want to know what's in it for them. And I think that facade will come falling down because you just can't borrow your way to prosperity. It's impossible. There's no math formula that allows it. So I think that, when we start really thinking about earning our way forward, is going to be a much more interesting place to play. And I think capitalism has a massive role, and not only just in doing it, but the leaders of capitalism, the John Loves, the Michael McCains, the Michelle DeManuels, the Mary DePaulis, these incredible forces of positivity coming out and bringing their voice to the conversation. So we're not making decisions just purely from bureaucrats who do a great job running the government, but it's a combined conversation that might lead us to a better positioning. That they might, even the bureaucrats might realize, if we want to have these programs, we better have the tax base that goes with it. And I think that when that happens, it's going to be an absolute renaissance. We will believe again in brands and business, and maybe even each other, versus hiding in these little castles, just throwing these slingshots at each other.
Do you think one government has this perspective of yours more than another?
I think what we're seeing in New Zealand is incredibly refreshing. I mean, there's a socially minded leader, not afraid to make tough decisions, and celebrating what that country's all about and what their brand is all about. And I think that's the future. I mean, I grew up with three sisters. I had an incredible role model as a mom. I have two daughters. I would love, if I could wave a magic wand, have every country in the world run for 5 years by women, just to see what the difference might be in terms of what we spend on. And would we be spending all this money on weaponry and military, or we'd start repurposing those dollars? Would we be sharing wealth differently? Would we be Uh, uh, would we be competing in a different way? I would be an incredible social experiment because some of the countries that are being led that way really are refreshing looks at how democracy can prosper, being socially minded capitalist and capital minded socialist versus having these two as opposing forces.
Right, right. Well, that's a lovely point. um, I would love to segue into the volunteer work that you do. And when you think about serving for those that are, um, underprivileged or, troubled or whatever, what have you, and the term about impossibility to possibility, how do I want to word this? How do you see that term not reflected in these children's lives? Like, where have we missed the boat here? Is it the immediate families? Are they the communities at large? What comes up for you in your heart when you think about that?
So I've always believed in this proverb. I know it was grabbed by the Bible, but it's been around almost since the beginning of time, to teach people to fish and they can fish for a lifetime. It's the first thing I believe, that putting band-aids on festering wounds is never going to solve anything. It might make you feel good, but it's not
Yeah.
going to solve systemic racism. It's not going to solve issues we have with so many people living below the poverty line, not having a living wage. It's just not going to solve those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's great politically and it's great ribbon cutting, but it's proven that it's not working. I mean, just look at the opioid crisis.
Yes.
So the charities I got involved with, I've been on boards in the past. I was on my kids' school board, but I find my best work is when I can actually see the dollars working. And what I mean by it is that you see that they are transforming lives. Sketch is a great charity in Toronto, which takes kids off the street and they can come in there and start learning a craft. They can learn how to mix music or learn how to cook, or
Love
they just
that.
gymnastics and dance, or with each other and they're celebrating each other. Jean-François Archimbault with La Table des Chefs, repurposing food that would have gone into waste and through the magic of chefs, turning it into meals for people that need it. But more importantly, teaching also those people how to get more out of their food dollars. That bag of chips is not what they should be thinking about. And here's what they can be doing. Mark Brand's doing a very similar thing in Vancouver. Global Citizen, who I've been part of since its inception in Canada, Hugh Evans, trying to get governments to put more money towards programs that really matter. Things like UN Millennial Goals, enabling women to have in third world countries an opportunity to become entrepreneurs, because we know that when they do, prosperity happens within their village. And by the way, this isn't women versus men. This is just part of what Global Citizen's doing.
Yes.
Vaccinating the world against polio, because they know how crippling that disease is. Education, a lot of places around the world, if you can't afford school bag and school and pens, you can't go to school. So therefore you become very inexpensive child labor. So finding ways to make sure that they have the tools to go to school, because we know that when you educate a society, they can be less reliant on government and more reliant on themselves. So the charities that I get involved with are really to see eyes that were dull shine, hearts that weren't beating beat, people finding a way to fight their way back into society are the ones that I have a lot of heart for. And that's nothing against what Paul Aloff raising over $1 billion for Princess Margaret Hospital and curing cancer. Those are big checks, big events, and I am so humbled that they do it. Mine is a little bit more granular, and I guess it comes from my background, because we weren't that far from being on the street on many occasions. If it wasn't for my mom, we would have been, or split up as a family. So I think that's probably why my heart rests where it does.
Right. Lovely. I did want to talk quickly about our healthcare system, because that's certainly come up, full transparency, during this crisis, and particularly where my sort of concern is just for long-term care and how we treat the elderly. This sort of youth-driven thing, as we both are, probably aware of, and how we kind of close off aging.
Yeah.
And I wish that we could turn that around somehow. What do you think?
Well, I think again, you've got a math problem. We're an aging society. We're going to demand, in the last 6 months of our lives, we take about 90% of the healthcare that we use in our entire life in 6 months because
Right.
the healthcare community is passionate about keeping us going. We're going to hit our crossroads. So I did a podcast with Michelle DeManuel, and she's brilliant, saying, down the road, healthcare is going to be much more preventative and long-term sustaining as you deal with disease as you age.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to cure cancer in our lifetime. We're not going to cure diabetes, but we're going to find a way to let you manage your life with it. That's going to be very expensive. Long-term care facilities, we know they need ventilation. They need better services. They need more resources. But as this young generation comes up, already buried in the most insurmountable debt ever, because we've been spending like drunken sailors for years, even pre-COVID, they're going to have to be paying a lot of their time towards just servicing that debt. They're going to want social programs for their families. They're going to want to have good health care. And we've got this taxing aging population. And I think our only way out is believe in the ingenuity of human beings, technology. And maybe now we've got an appetite to fast track things that in the past would have taken years because it was bureaucrats love status quo. That is why the bureaucracy swells, is because they just keep status quo. I've never met anybody in government that's a lawbreaker, but there's a lot of people that spend their life making laws. So we just continue to expand all of this. If we learn anything from COVID, is we're going to have to get rid of a lot of that stuff. We're going to have to focus on telemedicine, home diagnostic tools. We're going to have to realize that preventative health, nutrition, how we take care of our bodies, how we exercise, are all going to be passed to longevity and less taxing the healthcare system. If not, healthcare will be one of the ways that our economy will collapse on top of itself, like we've seen around the world where countries have just borrowed their way and not built an economy to support their way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be pessimistic, but that's just what we're doing right now. We're no different than what I see in Venezuela or Greece, and we're actually going about it in a faster way. And, we've always relied on our natural resources to pull us out. But, natural resources now are becoming, even though we harvest them in a very environmental friendly way, it's very easy in social media around the world to pick on how we take advantage of our natural resources when you have leadership in Ottawa that know they can score political points globally for feeling that they're on that side. And that's the juxtaposition we're in. So if we're not going to have our natural resources, we better find a way to have other ways to create an economy capable of sustaining the kind of promises that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
This has become a very political interview. I had no idea.
Don't worry, I'm going to soften it up in a minute.
Okay.
But I was just going to say, it reminds me of the blue zone countries around the world. And wouldn't it be cool if we became that? This is a dream. I mean, and then getting the assistance of our Indigenous people and how they really live off the land. That would be just a real turnaround.
I've done some stories with Indigenous people and what's inside their society, their circle, their way of treating nature, respecting nature, that nobody owns nature.
Yes.
Some of the medicines that they have are incredible. And one of the advantages that we have is this massive, wonderful, diverse Indigenous population, because this was a big country, and we had people that learned how to farm. We had nomadic tribes. We had people that lived off different parts of the land.
Right.
And to be able to unlock that and have them contribute versus we're always seem to be at opposing forces. Again, or throwing out band-aids. We're going to start every conference by naming the lands that these tribes were on originally, and say that's wonderful. But what lessons can we get? So I was just naming it. What are the three things that we could learn from what happened on these lands 100 years, 150, 200 years ago? Mm-hmm. And it's not just Indigenous. It's our immigrants that are coming in. It's our fresh water. I mean, we only have 38 million people to feed. We're educated. We should be the envy of the world. There's not a country in the world, and we are in the sense of people that want to move here, but we should literally be standing ourselves up and going, we can be the most socially minded country in the world because of our ability to afford it. And when we can, we're going to share that wealth in a way that's never been done before. So people have a living wage, so that people have an opportunity. I mean, the fact that we're charging for education, the most important thing is to bring a society up on their feet, that we're charging for education. A country that should be as wealthy as ours just shows that we've absolutely lost the plot. And because that's, what we'll do politically is we might say, oh, we'll pay off some of your loans because we want to get votes, but we're not getting to the transformative element that says education's free. And by the way, it doesn't have to be in big brick walls anymore. It can be through MOOCs. It can be done online. It could be, but everybody in Canada should have an opportunity to enrich their minds. And that's what I'd love to see when you talk about a blue zone. I want to go beyond blue zone in terms of longevity, and a blue zone in terms of how we think, feel, and do.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. So what inspires you every day?
People, my wife inspires me in terms of how much she gives to others. My two puppies inspire me in terms of just their unconditional love they have for each other and us.
Awesome.
And then I go, wow, it's just like they're living here. They're living creatures. They figured it out.
You bet.
The resilience of small business owners, their belief that there's going to be a better day inspire me. Or the people like the Chris Hadfields that I've interviewed, and the Harry Connick Juniors, and Jennifer Menard Shan, who completely retooled their business. That's, she staffed events, and suddenly every event gets canceled in a day, and takes her whole learning to staff frontline healthcare. That stuff inspires me, because you go, theme of our show, you can accept impossibility, or you can choose to fight for possibility. So the people that are fighting, not always winning, not always surviving, but fighting, that's where my inspiration comes.
Sure. Well, you seem to have found your purpose in life.
I'm very lucky that very lucky at this age in my life.
Yeah.
That when I sold my last agency, I just was tired of the agency world. I'd done it for 30 years. I had no idea what I was going to do. Thought maybe teach and do some speaking, and all of this led to COVID, and thinking maybe I could help transform the way we personalize small business, which led to the podcast, which led to RBC, which led to the radio show, what leads me to every week having the great gift that I'm being given to talk to people like you and others that are trying to make a difference out there, and to share these stories is just, as I said to my wife, I don't tell this to RBC, but I would do it for free, because I don't know if I could afford to do it for free, but I would, because it's a labor of love. And God bless this company that I found as a partner, because they are so into this quest. They say, don't make it about us, make it about these small business heroes. You're talking too much about RBC. I'm doing it right now.
No, I don't care. Go for it.
We don't need that. What we really want to do is help. And I'm going, what, as opposed to going, hey, can you talk about this or talk about that? So, yeah.
No, I think that's wonderful. I would have never have known about that had I not encountered you on LinkedIn. So
yeah, it's fantastic.
And I've listened to many of your podcasts, and and the way you strategize the whole show is very clear, concise. It's beautifully done.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you bring out the humanity. Yeah, no, it's great.
It is the humanity. You know what? Humans are special people. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to be angry. We don't have to be vengeful. We can help each other. And when we do, that amplification effect is, imagine if social media for a week was just positive stories.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine if the news led with a great story. We should be celebrating our economy's opening up. Patios, we're going to have a cold beer in 10 days probably. And people are out golfing again and walking. Instead, we're hearing about a black fungus in India as the headline. Really? Can you not be more responsible as media and celebrate what we have and show it, as opposed to chase, ambulance chasing for eyeballs and ears, because negative is an easier sell.
Well, okay. Why are we built that way though? But is it? I certainly.
We're ambulance chaser. We're wired for negative. We're that's what we bring to the dining room table. We fear. Why do most artists? It's easier to write a sad song than a happy song, right? That
Right.
fear is an easy way to tap in to your emotions. And as media continues to have the resources collapse, there's less long form journalism
Mm-hmm.
and real good storytelling, and much more about the headline and the burst. And it's like National Post and the Sun versus Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail, conservative versus liberal, right? And you go, like, why aren't we using that? Because they're going, we're not going to have the readers, therefore we won't have the advertisers, therefore we won't be in business. And that's probably the reason why. It's survival versus, I think, deep down, when you go into journalism, you want to be that unbiased, unvarnished reporter that presents a story,
Yeah.
and in every facet of that prism, in a way that when people read it, it's meaningful.
The truth, the word truth. We seem to be afraid of the truth, whether we're in our immediate family systems or once we start growing up in the world. It's like we train our children. We hope to educate and teach our children to be good, honest, kind, truthful human beings. And then somewhere along the lines, it's like we've been told this big fat lie that you actually can't be truthful.
Well, the trouble with things like truthful and honesty,
Okay.
integrity, is they're intangibles. There's nobody that comes in and goes, on the scale of 0 to 10, I will have to say you're an 8.8 when it comes to integrity. So I've met some of the most people that I think have the least amount of integrity, and they
Right.
would argue with a polygraph, I have the same integrity you do, because every day of their life they probably pushed out that line, and that's only that line was acceptable, and that line was acceptable. They could be out pumping stock that has no value to seniors in Florida, and they don't consider that disgusting, because that's what they've done, and it's just become who they are. So I think part of the problem is it's there's nobody measuring. I always said this about my mom. I always wished there was an award for moms, because at the end of the day, someone would come in and say, I just want to tell you, you're a 5-star mom for all you're doing, for whatever the criteria is. And I think when you don't have ability to quantify something, to measure something, when I step on a scale, I go, I got to lose a few pounds. If we get a bad report card from our kids, we're going to get them a tutor. It's important that when we quantify things, it gives us a biased reaction. But I think when it comes to things like integrity and truth, it's so difficult to measure that it's almost impossible to hold on to. And I think it's just, the parents that teach great lessons in life, the mentors that offer great lessons in life, that keep people hopefully on the right path in life, is the case. Am I 100% truthful? Absolutely. It's impossible. There's no such thing in a human being. Did I steal a chocolate bar as a kid? Yeah. No. Should I have known? I was wrong. I was stealing, and I was taught not to steal. All of these things, but did I follow a life of crime? Absolutely not. Do I try to be good more than evil? Absolutely. So it's a tough position. Humans are flawed. We all have warts. We've all made mistakes. We all have regrets. But again, I go back to my thing. If we focus less on that and more on what we can do and the good things, and celebrate it, encourage it, and foster it,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be a better human race.
So I'd like to end off by talking about how Tony takes care of his body, mind, and spirit, and how your family fits into that.
Well, work and life balance has always been a problem for me, because I love what I do.
Okay.
So I could work. People say, God, I got this message to me at 5 a.m. Are you crazy? I'm going, I woke up, I couldn't wait to get, because it's not work to me. It's a labor of love.
Sure.
So my big struggle is always balancing that. And when I was in Costa Rica this winter, it was wonderful, because the sun's really hot during the day. I've had skin cancer, so I won't go out during the day. So I could work during the day, but the morning and the evening, we went for long walks, and and we ate great local food. And I celebrated this pura vida life of saying, just because a car stopped in front of you talking to someone, they don't deserve a honk. Just sit back and wait. Just relax.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I learned a lot this winter, because balance and impatience has always been one of my flaws, because I just want to get at it. And I'm also dealing with your mortality, because you realize this is near the end of my career, and I don't want it to end. And ageism will creep in, and I don't want I don't want people to say that's not relevant anymore because you got a lot of wrinkles. Or I'm fortunate I got my dad's hair because it stays, I mean, it's a lot of gray, but it's, people suddenly gray, you go, wow, this, unless you're a tall CEO, this, strength to you, you start getting dismissed because you're an older person. It's the sad part of Canada. A lot of cultures, it's the opposite. The grandparents are the ones that are the most respected and revered because they have great lessons to pass down. So, to me, I've always going to struggle with work and life. I eat well, I exercise well, I do yoga, learned how to surf this winter. I enjoy great conversation and great people. I'm stimulated. My mind is always moving and learning and growing. So I'm blessed that way. But boy, should I be sleeping more? Every night I wake up, I'm going, I probably could have used another hour. And it's just because I'm woken up with this sense of to get back at it.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
It's wonderful to have this passion and to be stimulated, but I know that my longevity in my life down the road, if you look at the math and the science, sleep is the most important thing. It's not that I sleep 6.5, 7 hours a night. It's not like I'm one of those 3-hour nutcases, but you keep reading about how important if you could get 7.5 or 8 hours sleep is to your cells and regenerating. But I'm not interested in sleeping pills, and I'll do turmeric and milk sometimes when I remember, but I'm not interested in a faux sleep. So yeah, I'll figure that out, and maybe one day when I'm a little less busy, I'll have a little bit more time for it.
Okay. Any last words for us, Mr. Storyteller?
I'll end by just saying to everybody out there, every time you're in front of anybody that matters to you, think of their quest. Think of the story that they're on. Think of their unmet needs that they're trying to solve. They're things that are causing them to feel uncertain, impossible, insecure, and say, what can I do to take those little things away and turn uncertain to certain, or impossible to possible, or feeling that insecure to secure? What can I do as my part to help them get to where they want to go? And when you follow that path, you'll be a better leader, you'll be a better employee, you'll be a better parent, mentor, friend, you'll be a better contributor to society, because I think you'll be in a world of servitude of helping others, which in fact will serve you to help you feel who you are. So that's how I would end with my story, is understand that everybody in life is on a quest to get things, to find things, to do things, to survive, and helping people on that quest is an incredible place to be.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm so sorry I got you up so early in the morning. You look much more alive than I did. So you must have got more sleep than I did. Well,
no, actually, no. I'm like you. I'm a very short sleeper.
Yeah.
No, it was wonderful to meet you. And what's also I'd like to also say is I missed this question in the interview, but just the diversity across Canada and how there are so many different mindsets, right? And so for me, when I'm whether I'm listening to Chatter That Matters or
Yeah.
reading your posts, it's like there's an individual in Toronto who's bringing life out there for me. It's like, wow, what's going on there? You know what I mean? And to me, that's really important because anyway, it's I want to know more and more what's going on in this country. And there's going to be a lot of stories that are going to come forth, I hope, out of COVID. And,
So now, how do I follow you to find out more about what Tea and Chocolate's doing? Is that is podcast, videos? It's your YouTube channel? Like, what's the way that I can?
It's YouTube.
Okay, I will do my part, and I apologize I haven't since. And tell me what show you want me to talk about. Send me one of the shows that you're happy about, and I'll put it out in my social media feed.
We're still recording.
Well, hopefully you're going to edit that part out. But
oh my God. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to end off here.
Yeah. You do edit, I hope.
No.
Okay. Well, you can edit off that little piece. Okay. Anyways,
all
right.
Okay.
I have to roll. Sadly, I'm due to help my mother-in-law